I've done
Right.
a few podcasts, but more in relation to my political work.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something that has kind of gotten more urgent, let's say, in recent times? Or I mean, I obviously I've had a quick look at your biog, and I know that you've had a long career of kind of social justice and advocacy and working in different kind of areas of that.
Yes, urgency, but no urgency. And what I mean by that is um, we now have a source of, and this person that's in the White House, but these problems have existed for a long time.
Indeed.
So I'm kind of advertent to people all of a sudden up in arms when these problems have been here for a very long time. So I've not really bought into that, and I respect people because who are getting more engaged, and perhaps that will continue. But just anti-Trump, I said his name, and once he's out of office, all will be right with the world is not the
Yeah.
case.
I
And
was reading I was reading a piece by Ian Dunt, who's on Substack, and he's a kind of big political writer and broadcaster and journalist over here, and pretty progressive left wing sensibility, but also very passionate, I guess is the word, in terms of the way that he articulates himself. And he was sort of talking about today the way in which Trump's actions are sort of priced in to everything in a way that is unlike any other leader. So the main argument was the markets aren't reacting to what he's saying or doing in the same way as if they would for other presidents. And he said, no, what's happened is us as a populace, the West, basically, because he was talking about Britain as well, and the markets together have kind of gotten into this scenario where we're like the frog in the boiling water. We haven't noticed how warm it's been getting until suddenly we're boiling.
or that he's so absurd that if you react to every single tweet that him or his staff makes, or every comment he makes, the market would just be, like a Geiger counter.
Yeah. No,
But
absolutely.
unfortunately, he is making real impacts on people's lives. I feel it myself, and everybody I know feels it. So it is serious stuff. But
Sure. Whereabouts are you based, Tom? Just
so
again,
so I'm
exactly.
in New Jersey,
Right.
central New Jersey, Jersey Shore, really. I'm about 15 minutes west of Asbury Park. A lot of people know Asbury Park because it was one of the first uh, attractions at the shore. All the people from New York would go there and what have you.
Right.
Yes, it's a
Fantastic.
great place to be. I'm on a 7.5 acre farm, but I can drive 15 minutes. I'm at the shore.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds
thing, isn't it?
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Tom, for taking the time to do this. I was just reading your piece earlier on today entitled First Dates, and you sort of alluded to the fact that every interview with somebody who you don't really know, who you know of, or you've had some sort of online connection with, is something of a first date, and obviously trying to get past the barriers and form a kind of authenticity in conversation is what we're kind of, or what you would hope to get to quite quickly. And what's interesting in that piece, I thought, was, and we're both of a certain age where you get to the point where there's less and less tolerance for pretense and performance. So that sort of, I'm really fascinated by your sort of sense of just coming to a connection, a network, a relationship, a person, and sort of just being who you are. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and I've kind of always been like that, and it doesn't always go over well.
Right.
Um, as I said in the piece,
Yeah.
um, but that's why I'm married for 33 years, because first date, it was a long, great first date, and we both
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
laid all our cards on the table. And at that time, we were kind of broken wings. Um, But, yeah, like you said, I meet people, and I am what I am, and I'm right out front. I'm a first-time filmmaker. My son has been making films for 10 years, and so I've kinda been around it, and I have some friends who are editors and do documentaries, but, yeah, it's we don't have time for that, and, I've found it refreshing that when you go into a conversation, a Zoom call or an in-person meeting, that when that pretense, uh, isn't in the mix, it just makes for much better conversation,
Yeah,
and I've really
100%.
found that with people I've met at local events, people at Film Stack. It's not about who they are and what they've done. I will Google them and go, "Oh, wow, that person won a Student Academy Award," or whatever, but they don't put it out there. It's one person to another, you know?
Yeah. And I think also it's difficult because everything is so transactional these days. There's a sense when you're working, and I felt that in certain scenarios where you're talking to somebody and it's kind of like, what can you do for me in this, in this negotiation, as it were? But it's something I'm definitely tried to get past specifically myself. And when you talk a lot in your writing, and I think your documentary obviously sort of lends to this in terms of the notion of community, and we'll talk a lot about that later on, because as I say, you have written about it. But what we do on this, or what I do, I should say, on this kind of video podcast, is try and set up by talking about a person's relationship to cinema, and sort of using that as a kind of framing mechanism for the way they write and the way they make films. And then by the end, I get to my 10 questions on cinematic identity.
Okay.
um
So
and
is this the preamble? This isn't recorded
no
yet, or do you
I
edit this?
Yeah, I'll edit it, so don't worry.
Oh, okay,
So yeah,
'cause,
yeah, well, yeah, don't
I'm
worry.
having a scotch.
You have a scotch. In fact, I was going to get myself a little drink of wine, but I realised I haven't got any in the house. But don't worry
Oh,
about
I'm
that.
sorry.
You knock yourself out.
A
The other thing is,
single malt Glenlivet. I love it.
very nice, very nice. So
The oth
yeah, I mean, let's get into it. Really, I'm really interested actually, because obviously we'll talk about documentaries. But when you've got somebody, let's say of the older generation, it's always fascinating to me to hear about how they got into movies as a kid. What was the thing that sort of brought them to this medium? So I don't know. Have you got any kind of early stories about going to the movies or seeing particular movies that really informed you in terms of you were into this medium early on?
Yeah, and I don't know if this happens anymore, but my first exposure to films was in grammar school. They would bring us all into the gym and show us a movie, and the first movie I remember was Pollyanna, so I'm dating myself. But it was wonderful because of course, the connotation now, you're a Pollyanna, but it just cinematically, the vibrant color, how it was shot, the story, it just was a different world that I didn't see, as a child growing up in fairly poor in St. Paul. And then another one I recall, I'm pretty sure it was called The Red Balloon,
Yeah,
and
that rings a bell. The red balloon.
yeah, and, as I recall, all it was this big red balloon that was just bouncing around. I think it was this French village, um, but I guess because of my age and didn't have preconceived notions of the world, it just allowed my imagination to really tell a story when there was really no script, no story, and I really didn't take note of how the other children were reacting to it, and I really wasn't I was just, "Wow, this is," and. So that was, I hadn't thought about that in a long time until, I knew we were gonna have a chat, and that was, yeah, definitely an influence. My parents, we were really poor when I was younger, and, we didn't actually go to the cinema proper, but we did go to the drive-in, and the reason we did that is because my mother and father could pay for their admission, and myself and my 2 other brothers at the time were in the back seat covered in a blanket.
Wow.
So they were only paying for themselves.
Right.
But it was amazing because beside the big screen, they always had a playground, so you could play during the intermission, and they showed cartoon shorts before, and, so it was a real experience, and really the only film I ever remember seeing was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and again, this fantastical story
Yeah.
but, it was an experience,
It's
you know?
interesting, isn't it, how that sort of sense of, as much as whatever film it is that you're going to see when you're a kid, I think sometimes it is the experience. So it's kind of a holistic thing that's going on, and it draws you into another world, but it's not, you don't really remember characters or plot or anything like that. It's like there's something alongside that draws you into the experience.
Yeah, absolutely, and, in a way, that's should carry over to as you're an adult. What is your experience watching that film? If you're so focused on, character development, all the elements of a film, so what? If you've gotten an emotional reaction to that film, isn't that what's most important? So as a child, you're not analyzing the film like you would as an adult and say, "Oh, well, that and this," and I wasn't handicapped even as an adult with knowing a lot about film. So I could just watch it and see, okay, did that touch me or didn't it? And that was kind of my litmus test.
Did you have any siblings or any influences sort of in the older years, like adolescent years, teenage years, when, films start to hit you on a slightly different level than when you're a kid?
Yes, well, I have a brother, a year older, brother a year younger, and the brother 9 years younger. He
Oh,
was
right.
he was the planned one who was supposed to be a girl, but that's not how it worked out.
Yeah.
But we really we lived in very close quarters, but we kind of went our separate ways. So we didn't have a lot of, back and forth as far as that goes. I was kind of very different from my brothers, but when we moved to New Jersey, we lived in this town, Secaucus, which is literally like 10 minutes from New York City. And for a while, there was nothing, no movie theaters. If you wanted to go to see a movie, well, for me, it was impossible because you had to drive. But then they opened a Cineplex. So everybody went to see movies. I think there was maybe 4 or 6, theaters, auditoriums. And that's when I started seeing, like, Star Wars, which just blew my mind, like everyone else, never the story, the which we could look back at now and say, "Well, it was kinda eh," but at the time, the visual effects were just amazing, and the most impactful film I saw was Rocky. I
Wow.
had
Okay. Great.
I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
never well, first off, that it was someone that was very relatable. I had never seen a character like that before. I mean,
Mm.
juxtapose that to like a Pollyanna or, I knew that was fantasy. This was I could see it was a real person and real streets. They shot it in the streets of Philly. It was a kind of a guerrilla shoot in a way. They had a budget, but the thing that really stays with me is at the end of the movie, everyone spontaneously stood up and cheered.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, talk about emotional impact.
Yeah.
So when I see lists of like the greatest movies, I'm like, you got to throw in the ones that had the most impact on
Mm.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You could find faults with it cinematically, perhaps, or what have you, you know. and people like yourselves can go into that. And I'm not pigeonholing you, but what's the emotional impact on the audience? At the end of the day, isn't that what's most important?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people kind of have written about that period, haven't they? And as you have, like you've cited Star Wars, but then there's Jaws,
Yeah.
and
Oh
other
yeah.
films are around that area. Superman was another one, which kind of changed the dial
Close
in terms of
Encounters was
Close
the third.
Encounters with another
Yeah.
one. Yeah, that sort of ushered in this big blockbuster era. But I think kind of culturally, people forget Rocky, but it really was a sort of signal of the end of that new Hollywood era, where with these introspective pictures, which was a great era. It's my favorite era. But suddenly, here was this movie was about the American underdog, which is sort of
Yeah.
harkening back to that rags to
And
riches success story.
yeah, absolutely, and realism. So you add into that Saturday Night Fever, which
Right.
again, I was very attuned to that culture because that came out of really Queens and the
Sure.
discos, and new people definitely like that. Those
Right.
platform shoes that
Sure.
the shorter guy wore, people wore those in my high school. I actually copied John Travolta's hairdo when I had more hair.
Same
Um,
here when I had more hair. But
yeah,
mind you, I copied Tom Cruise in The Color of Money with the hair.
yeah,
But
you
same
know,
thing, though.
and you look at the timeline now. Scorsese was a little before that. What Meat Streets was 74, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so.
But
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
still kind of cut of the
yeah.
same cloth,
But Taxi
and
Driver was that era as well, wasn't it?
76, right?
77-ish. But that was
Yeah,
still new Hollywood, I would say.
yeah.
In terms of sort of being more downbeat. I mean, Rocky was kind of like, you think about it, it was a really, people getting behind it and having that emotional
Hmm.
sort of reaction to
Hmm.
it, as you
Hmm.
say. But yeah.
And then fast forward to I started going to college, university, I guess you say, in my home state, New Jersey. And after a few weeks, I said, I don't want to live at home. So I transferred, or just started again at the University of Minnesota.
Mm.
And my mom's family's out there. And the person I'm most akin to is my Uncle Lance. He um, just introduced me to a different way, I'll say. He graduated top in his class. He had scholarships to every elite university, and said, "No, I'm not doing that." I don't think he ever cut his beard since, or his hair. And he lived in this big house in Minneapolis with a bunch of other people, and he would have books on his shelf like, Hesse, Carlos Castaneda, you know, the existentialist philosophers, Sartre, Camus, just, but he would also take me to movies. There was this wonderful theater that just closed 2 years ago called the Uptown Cinema. And I remember going to see Eraserhead and a film called Montenegro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't think I've
which,
seen that.
yeah, I don't even know, I couldn't tell you what it was about.
Right. Okay.
Other than it took me to a different world, and My Dinner with Andre. So I
Mm.
started seeing films like that, and what was very interesting was, my uncle was a man of few words. So, it wasn't like after we saw it that we got real chatty and analyzed the film and everything. He might just say a few words, and that spoke volumes, like, just
Right. Yeah, yeah.
what was the essence of what
What was going
what that
on?
film did to you. So
Yeah,
that was a
yeah.
a big influence too. So I won't claim I've seen tons of movies, and there's a big period where I didn't even go because I didn't like what was showing in the movie theater, and I didn't really have frankly, the time raising children, or the venue or opportunity to see films that, you know, now I need to do a lot of catch up.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
in the
yeah.
last year or so, when I decided to make a documentary, then I started especially looking at for documentaries that I
Right,
wanted
right.
to watch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that but the last thing I would say about that there is that, we also had a tradition in my family. We're a large but very close-knit family that the day after Christmas, we would all, and sometimes 30 of us, go to a movie. And it was Disney movie or what have you,
The
but
family outing.
it was a family outing, and, so we had this whole thing, we'd go to my Uncle Bill's for the Christmas. He had the big house and the tree and set up a train set, and then next day we'd go see the movie,
Yeah,
so it very much became, and I don't know if people still do that, maybe because it's so priced out or what have you, but so
yeah,
that's just another societal element and worth of films, even beyond the production value or whatever you
sure.
wanna call it.
Sure. Could you do me a favor? Could you move your mic
Up
just out because it's scratching on your beard and I can hear the
Oh, I'm
interference of
sorry.
it. That's better. That's
Okay,
miles better.
sorry.
Yeah, perfect. No, no, it's all good. I just want you to sound good, that's all. Um, no, that's really interesting, and I definitely want to sort of talk a little bit about your taste in movies and particularly in documentaries because I would imagine that there is quite a big influence of I don't know, but maybe the classical American tradition, but even on your sort of top 10 list, which you submitted for,
Mm,
the top 10 films of the year
yes.
that we did, were very much um, documentary heavy, but also document quite a few of them were ones that you wouldn't have seen. So I think it seems to me that you're quite an advocate for the documentary that maybe is one that you really rate but hasn't been seen by many people.
Yeah, I think my list was entirely documentary
Right, gotcha.
'cause initially I didn't respond to your invite to submit top 10, and then thought about it after the fact, after our
Mm,
call with other folks, and said,
yeah,
"Well, I actually have been seeking out documentaries," and I thought it was, important to talk about because it wasn't just viewing the film, but it was also meeting some of the people who made the films and
mhm,
how that, um, informed and contributed to my journey as a first-time
right,
documentary filmmaker. So people I referenced like Glenn Schweitzer, who, I just ran into at this little dinky film festival in New Jersey that I didn't even know existed, and
right,
about the same age, similar stories, and he's did this fantastic, documentary, and I just wished him happy birthday yesterday, and he's out in
mm,
LA now, filming a documentary on Harry Houdini, and was
right,
about to interview David Blaine and David Copperfield. So, yeah, he was, I think he still has a company in Nashville. So, he was involved heavily in the country music scene and,
mm,
doing album covers and some videos and things. So he kind of shifted gears and started to do his own thing. So to me, it's just fascinating, getting to know people like that and just keeping up with them. And
sure. I
again,
think
not transactional, not like, oh, well, I mean, he volunteered to do my poster because he also does posters. And I was like, that would be
well, that's
fabulous.
great.
But it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to get this guy to do my poster. And
Yeah,
that's not how I've been. And maybe because I'm in a unique situation that I've started late, uh, I don't have the same constraints or needs that other people do, which I can understand is, you're trying to scratch out a living, and it's easy to fall into that, transactional but for me, it was more like, who can I meet? Community.
yeah.
If I'm doing this, I want somebody else to do this, and particularly the young people. And I think we'll talk about that later with my son. But
Yeah, 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 for sure.
I
But it's
totally,
another
I
film.
totally lost your question now.
No, no, don't worry about it. No, the other film I was going to mention that I just because I was looking for one on I hadn't seen I don't think I'd seen any on your list, so I was kind of looking for one
Okay,
to
so I
look at.
stumped you.
Yeah, you did indeed. But I managed to catch Bad Things Happen in Philadelphia, which was
Yeah.
available over here.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, that's a film that's about gun violence, and that's something as a Brit that we find kind of fascinating yet incomprehensible about US culture. But actually, it sort of wasn't really about, I mean, it sets up as about gun culture, but really it's about the reaction to that by, this one particular guy who was trying to help kids get into basketball so they weren't on the streets. And I thought it was a nicely well made documentary, but it was very much an advocacy documentary. I wondered if that was kind of influencing you as
Yeah.
well, the way you were thinking about yours.
Well, I think there's a very interesting backstory. So, Ray had submitted in New Jersey to this film festival called the Basie Breakthrough Film Festival for the last 2 years of their high school. And they have panels, and one of the panelists was the filmmaker, Kyra Knox. And Kyra Knox had a corporate job, but always wanted to be a filmmaker, and finally just did it. So that was her first documentary.
Yeah.
So, I guess you start with what you know. So the lead character was her cousin. So he was and you find this out in the documentary, but he was a basketball star. But the reality is that Philadelphia is a very, dangerous,
Yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of gun violence.
Talking
And
about 500 murders plus a year now with guns,
yeah,
isn't it? It's just something astronomical.
and I thought it was, and it was very low budget, but I thought it was fascinating some of the things she did, like using the actual police footage. When what could you possibly do with Hollywood special effects and all those tools at your disposal versus that actual footage? Because that's what it actually looks
Yeah, yeah,
like.
yeah.
This
It's like
scared
the Wild
kid,
West, isn't it? It's just
yeah,
crazy.
this scared kid with a gun who's deathly afraid of getting shot themselves. I mean, you see in Hollywood these guys swagger and shoot. It's not like that. They're scared to death, but this is their life, right? I mean, I've been to Philadelphia has the Liberty Bell, but it also has a place called Needle Park. And that's not its real name, but it's called that
That's what it's
because
called. Yeah, yeah.
that's where the junkies are and they're
Sure.
shooting up during the day. I mean, this disparity.
Yeah.
So, and she's gone on to do some incredible
Yeah.
documentaries and also, commercial work. Not, I won't say commercial, like for nonprofits
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
advocate and
Yeah. It
promote their
definitely
work.
it definitely has a little bit of the first feature about it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
In terms of there's an audio track that goes on underneath throughout, and I'm like,
yeah,
you don't need that. It's
right,
yeah, it's just too
right,
much.
right.
But yeah, the way that she gets kind of like the stories out of the characters, and I think that
Yeah,
the talking heads are very good.
yeah, yeah. I thought she was good at getting at the heart of it, you know. And these are things well, I don't know how you want to struggle. These are things I struggle with because it's the emotional heart of it that I know exactly
Yeah,
what it is with my documentary, but it's the doing of it and what skill level you have people around you to really
yeah, yeah, yeah,
capture that. That's
yeah.
been the challenge for me, not having a
Sure.
huge budget. But
So you've done the same thing though, haven't you? You've decided at this point, that now is the time, now or never, to make a documentary. So what kind of, I mean, I know you've talked about your son making films for 10 years. What triggered you though to make that leap? Was it his kind of influence? You know what I mean? Was there a conversation? How did it come about really?
not really. I had been so active in political or social activism, then political activism while I was doing social activism. I was a volunteer in the Bernie Sanders campaign, went to like 4 states, phone banking, and then became a member of the Green Party and worked on 2 presidential campaigns. But I wasn't seeing results. So in part I was burnt out, but also I was like, there's got to be a different way. So this was kind of just going on in my brain. And at the same time, Ray was working through her high school experience. and I wanted to be there for them. Um, but then they went to college and, you know, started having their own life. And so I'm looking at my wife and thinking, okay, I don't play cards, I don't bowl, I don't want to just. So what am I going to do? And combined with that was how do I be most how could I be most effective? Well, I could make a film because I have my son. So at minimum I have someone who is familiar with how to shoot a film, right? Because they got a very good education in high school. They were in a special magnet program that basically they learn things soup to nuts, every terminology, every piece of equipment, making their own films, going to film competitions. So a very good basic education, such that when they went to university, they skipped a lot of freshman classes because they were just things that they learned in
Too
sophomore
elementary.
year or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I felt, okay, I have the capability to make a film. And then people started joining along the way. But really my reason came down to maybe this is an effective way to create change or maybe awareness. So that was kind of my starting point. And I don't know how much you want to talk about how it evolved from there, but
No, a little bit. Yeah, yeah, go for it. Because I mean, again, I don't even know at this point, because you don't, on your Substack, you've written stuff about the process and stuff, but you haven't written a lot about what it's about and what you're trying to do with it. So I don't know how much you want to give away,
yeah,
but I'd really
no,
like to hear about what it actually is kind of
yeah, and
focused on.
it's not giving away. And I keep saying, I'm going to talk more about my documentary.
Right.
And I think the most I've talked about it and that people can glean from it is my interview with Thomas Leach. Because he was very good about really exposing and uncovering for myself why I was making this. So initially, and I wrote about this, it wasn't even a decision. It was like, okay, maybe this makes sense. But as I've been discovering through the interviews and the process, is that I'm really trying to answer a question for myself. And that question is why, since my earliest memories, I've always been concerned and care about the other, why I
Right.
can't accept the way things work in the world. And that was quite a difficult place to come from, especially with my upbringing, because there weren't people around me asking those kind of questions. They were just trying to survive, right? And it wasn't until um, actually my minister, right after high school, who invited me to this organization that was an ecumenical effort to bring a human element to this big development uh, central program they had for this area outside of New York City and New Jersey. So I started getting into that, and so this documentary, I started my first interview, second interview. I know I wanted it to be interviews with activists, and that was easy for me because I just went through my contacts, and you know I know hundreds and hundreds, and I picked first the ones that were in New Jersey, so they're easy. I don't have to travel too far, and then also a good cross section representative of different people.
So are you
uh
asking them why they do what they do so that the mirror then can come back to you and you can try and answer that question for yourself a little bit more?
Yeah, but it was a process. When I was first going to start filming, I met with this guy, Steve Rogers, who was actually a mentor to Ray in grammar school when they made their first film when they were 9. And I've stayed in touch over the years. And he produces, he's a one-man show. He films it, produces it, a series on PBS called Here's the Story, which is stories of places and unique people in New Jersey, and just does a fantastic job with it. He's done it for 13 years. And we had coffee with him, myself and Ray. And he said, I always lead off with, tell me about your childhood. And these activists, a lot of them have been interviewed on CNN and what have you. They're not asked this kind of questions. So that was a great lead-off question. So I started discovering more about them and finding more commonality, because I had commonality with them because we were out in the streets together, shoulder to shoulder. One interviewee I was arrested with. I mean, but I found the themes of that some of them had a quite difficult childhood, but they had, and some admitted they were privileged, but they all had the essence that they had this sense of empathy and caring for others, regardless of their upbringing. And obviously that carried over to them being activists and putting their time, even though most of them don't get paid, for helping others. So the interviews started informing that, and that's where I said, okay, I'm kind of discovering myself in this. Even though I knew I had a bond with these people, it became much deeper, and Thomas helped me understand that. So I'm really honing in on that. I'm in the process of editing my proof of concept, and I initially thought about using archival footage, and I decided I didn't want to do that because there's a lot of good social issue political films, which some are my favorite, but I wanted to do something different and really just poetic, lyrical, really just lean into the people's stories and create an atmosphere maybe where people could relate to them regardless of your political affiliation. Say these are just people, regular people like you and I, who, because I really feel, I don't really feel it's a scientific fact that the reason we're walking this earth versus the Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon is because we cared about people. That I wrote a Substack about this. Margaret Mead
Yeah.
discovered a bone that was healed. That happened because people waited for that bone to heal. They cared about that person. And that's what really separates us, or should
That's in your
separate
piece.
us.
Is that in your piece, C'est la vie, I think it's called? Is that right? Is
Perhaps,
or
yeah.
maybe another one. But in that as well, you sort of talk about that notion of mutual aid,
Yeah.
and I think that definitely relates to that sort of sense of um, the the absolute vital element of humanity is empathy. But I mean, it's amazing because it comes across in the way that you talk. And I was going to ask you about the idea of making a film that is kind of about empathy, but making sure that the tone doesn't fall into what is known right now, and you can see it everywhere, as virtue signaling.
Uh,
Do you know what I mean? Because I
uh-huh.
think what you're expressing there is just it's amazing to think about when there is so much cynicism and so much individualism in the world, and it's very easy to kind of you know to use a phrase that you've already sort of talked about earlier on, to be kind of Pollyanna-ish as well. So it's a very delicate balance, I think. How are you sort of dealing with all of these sort of competing ideas?
Well, um, I guess it's part of who I am as a person. My day job, I'm a construction project manager. I'm currently building an apartment building. I love the aspect of my job when I'm dealing and interacting with regular people, and we show kindness to each other. And most of them are immigrants. Some of them are probably illegal immigrants. So what? Um, you know, uh, so it's kind of keeping it grounded, I guess, um, because regardless of who you are, there has to be some kernel of humanity in you. Poorer people, it's just been my experience, but I think you could prove it out, have more humanity because they haven't separated, and they have the ultra wealthy who really I feel have lost their humanity, and it's, but the
Don't get me
vast
started on that. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like
but
how can
the
yeah,
vast majority of
yeah.
people, and this is including, like, I don't vilify or hate people who ascribe to the vitriol of Trump, because I understand, and one of my interviewees speaks eloquently to this, that he understands the political, social, economic reasons that they've arrived at that. So you have to understand that, and that people in their essence are looking for, most people are looking for something that is comforting to them, that to give, that gives them confidence, or explains what's going on, because it's hard when things, or you know the simple message, okay, I'm going to give you a job, I'm going to vote for that guy, or you know so there's two things that really, this is at a, a, a level in our brain chemistry that really derive pleasure for human beings, and one is empathy, and the other is certainty. And the the people who, in general follow Trump have found certainty, and that chemically in the brain is like a dopamine that fuels them. And you have to understand the power of that and not vilify that person, because if you put that all away, they're the same as you and I. And that's part of what I'm sensitive to. So I don't want to alienate anyone with the film. I want them to. I want to kind of just throw things out there, and not what's the word what the term you used before, about uh
Virtue signaling?
for yeah for it's do you relate to these people,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
and setting a tone of it's my intention is very lyrical and poetic, having some animation, and the sound, besides the music, but the sound itself, take you out of the place you're in and maybe
I think that
relate to
the
the people.
in 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 documentary sort of across the board now, or even in the way that we relate to each other, put documentary to one side, that sort of sense of overt didacticism doesn't seem to work anymore, whether it's people are influenced, in the way that they are on digital media, where we're psychologically nudged in some way. You know what I mean? That can be obviously very problematic, but just out and out telling people what to think and what to do is just, for the birds these days. And I think,
Yeah.
again, when you're making something like documentary, I think you've written a little bit about this as well, that documentaries can be as symbolic and as poetic as fiction films can. And I
Uh-huh.
think that the best documentaries kind of work on the level of a kind of intuitive resonance, rather than just this is kind of like the information. Have you got any like very strong influences? It sounds like you might be a kind of Wiseman person, because I've watched a few of his films recently because there was a retrospective in the BFI. But he's very observational, and the
Hmm.
camera sort of sits back and watches the action.
So, Dario, I'll plead ignorance, and
Right.
and
Okay.
I have to put him on my list. I have, you know, uh, searched, number one, for if anybody's doing something like I'm doing, and to date I haven't found it, which maybe is a good thing.
Maybe. Yeah.
I've found things that I really like. Some of them are more recent. Some of them are in the recent past. we could talk about, but I would like to look at Wiseman, sure. Um, but
And
yeah,
is there anything then that you've watched recently you've really been struck by?
yeah. So, well, I'll start with Thomas just because I looked at his work before our interview. Um, so I think his first doc was a conversation with Saul Leiter, who I'd never heard of. And if you're not familiar with his work, please look at it because I mean it's just amazing photography. He lived his life in Lower Manhattan and really never went anywhere, but his photographs are just beautiful. But what I really liked about what Thomas did was he basically, for except for actually sleeping there, lived with Saul Leiter for quite a period of time. And his sensitivity to that story. And then another documentary he did on a brilliant curling story, which was about the women's Scottish, well, they were playing to the UK, who won the gold medal,
Right. Okay.
which I'm
Yeah, I
sure
know
you're
that story.
familiar with.
Yeah, I know that story. Yeah.
But again, he he could have easily just made this wonderful, oh, amazing documentary, but he got into the personalities of the people and,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
so we, I really found we had commonality as far as that the story has to have some connection with you, so I really liked his. Um,
This is Thomas Leach.
this is
Yeah.
Thomas Leach. And um, recently, I mean, it's on Netflix, and I think it's one of the biggest documentaries of the year, is The Perfect Neighbor.
Right. I haven't seen this yet, so I'll
I
have to check this out.
loved it because um, it really gave me a lot of ideas for the future, but it was the footage was from police body cams, and because they were able to get access to that, it tells this story, which you know where it's going to land, you know what happens, but it's um, it's so realistic, but I don't know. It just blew me away, and I've watched it a few times, and every time I watch it, I find something else. And then juxtapose that to another documentary called Seeds, which
Yeah,
is
this is one I've
yeah,
heard of that's on my list as well.
which is about generational black farmers in the South. And I have to say, the first 5 to 10 minutes I watched it, I thought, okay, what are they doing here? Because it was very slow. It was this old black farmer in a beat up pickup truck driving in these rural roads, and then he would stop and chat to his neighbor who was a farmer, and they would show kind of the farming things. And then I was like, oh, okay, I get it. They're bringing you to what it's like to be a farmer there,
Yeah.
and really set the tone. And visually, the tone, it was shot in black and white. And then it hits you in the face when one of these farmers who you just said, okay, he's a regular farmer, was on the phone with somebody in the USDA in Washington, D.C., and said, look, if you're not going to take care of us, I'm going to drive D.C., I'm going to do your job for you, because the white farmers are getting their money and the black farmers aren't getting their money. But it was used so little, but so impactful.
Yeah.
But the majority of it was showing, like, okay, they harvest their pecans or peanuts and bring them, and they get $100 for a bag, and they go to church. And so I thought that was powerful too. Is like, it doesn't have to be all that. It doesn't have to be crazy, because I don't lean towards documentaries that are, I don't know what right term to use, like rah rah, or there's, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, I know.
and I guess some have that place, but that's not for me. I mean, I like Ken Burns, and I mean his research is just incredible, right?
Mm.
Um, and I like Michael Moore. I would
Yeah.
never do a documentary like that. First of
No,
all, I'm
no,
not
no.
Michael Moore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and others serve different purposes, and I get that, but I really lean into the ones that really aren't so much about the issue. The issue's there, but it makes you care about that issue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So why would you care about
Right.
black generational farmers? Well, now in this film, I think you've walked in their shoes. And then them just putting a little bit of why you're making this film is because they're getting screwed. The white farmer's getting their money, the black farmer's not. You don't have to
Yeah.
like make a big deal out of it. Focus that, make that the focus of the film. You're really feeling what those people are like.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I also loved, going a little further back, like whose streets. Our, about Ferguson. One of
Mm.
the
I don't think I've seen that one. Whose Streets? That's
yeah.
interesting. I'll write that down.
Yeah, let me get I made some notes. It was two directors on that one. Um Yeah, that was
Michael
I'll
Brown
probably
and
butcher
Ferguson
her name.
Rising. Yeah. Sabala Folayan.
No,
Folayan.
Foy and Damon Davis. Yeah, whose streets. And the and it was Verite but one of the people I interviewed was down there. He is a school teacher and basically said to me in the interview, I've made it past 30. I'm not dead. I'm not in jail. And somebody called me up and said, you need to come to Ferguson. And it was an existential crisis, but he's like, I have to do this. And he's like, I'm on the streets. And if you watch this documentary, because I wasn't there, but these people are putting their lives on the line because,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just surreal. I mean, I don't know if you experience that in England when there's protests, but you're facing military equipment that is left over from Afghan war, Iraqi war that they sold to police departments.
Same.
So it's insane. Uh, and he became pretty well known on Twitter and what have you, just because he was there. You remember the beginning of Twitter where it was really valuable? People
Yeah.
would just
I
report.
kind of do in the distant past,
Yeah, so like, oh, we're on, this street and the police, and live videoing, now it's become a shit show. But
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I hope you don't have any sponsors.
No, no, it's fine. You can say what you want.
Yeah, but you know, so that was one. Uh, there's
Have you seen Time? Have you seen that film, Time?
no, I haven't.
From 2020. I think that was on Netflix. I'm right in saying, but it's about this. That's about this couple who they lose their business and they end up holding up a bank. They literally sort of decide that they're going to rob a bank to try and save their business because they've got kids and they don't see any other way out of them. But they get caught, and then I think it's the wife decides that she's going to document her kids growing up while the husband is in prison. And it's just about this. It's a really incredible sort of almost meta use of sort of documentary and personal footage. And it goes across like 21 years. It's just absolutely incredible. But again, it's that sort of the political element of it is not didactic. It kind of underpins this story, which is quite spectacular of them robbing this bank,
Yeah, a simple story speaks volumes, right? Because it just represents what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another one I guess the final one I wrote down just to respond to what was by Amy Berg that had to deal with, I have to get the title of it, but it had to deal probably most closely to what I'm doing, but not so much stylistically, but about activist burnout and, because that's something that the people I've known, I mean, it's their life. They still have regular lives. They have families and what have you, but they have no hobbies. This is it, and that
And that sense of
compunction.
having to keep going in the
Yeah,
face of Trump and,
yeah,
everything else. It
yeah.
must be incredible to have that
And
motivation.
knowing that most of the time, well, first of all, it's a long haul,
Yeah.
that it's a continuous series of battles, and that you may never win. You may never see the promised land. I've been in some good actions. I've only been in one that amazingly worked,
Right.
you know, but it's rare, and
Yeah.
it was just because of very good organizing, you know, but yeah, it's a tough, but it's something you're compelled to do. It's like, once you see the light and the way things are, at least for the people I know who are activists, you just can't turn your back on that. You can't turn away from it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No,
But I want to find the commonality
yeah.
with everybody.
It's something that has always impressed me, and I tend to look at it through the lens of artists. And when you see a body of work, somebody who knows what they are, knows what they want to do, and they do it for their entire life over and over again. And this is something similar in what you're talking about, where it's kind of like, there's a political and ideological dedication,
Hmm.
and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what else is going on in the world. This is the thing that I need to do. And there's something kind of impressive about that to me.
Yeah, and that it's regardless of who's in office, who's in the White House,
Mm,
the issues don't change.
yeah.
Democrats haven't supported universal health care. Our health care is for shit. I want to move to England or a lot of other countries. you
It's getting
know,
worse here, I can tell you. They're
yeah,
defunding it like you wouldn't believe, but it's not as bad
yeah.
as the US, that's for sure.
You know, name an issue, right? And
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I know activists back to the Vietnam War, to anti-nukes and yada yada. So I mean, these issues, yeah, and they've been consistent throughout their lives, and it's doesn't really matter who's in power because it's just a different shade of the same
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
you know.
One thing I wanted to ask you about working with, your child,
Hmm.
essentially, who's grown up now, obviously, but I wondered, have you learned something about yourself from them that you were surprised by in that sense, kind of working together and figuring things out together through film?
Maybe rediscovered as the yeah. Um, depending what stage of your life you're in, you kind of put things away, right, to serve what's at hand. So I wasn't too focused or concerned about what I might want to be doing. I was there for both my children, and so again, when they went to college, that kind of started that again. Okay, what do I want to do? Because I was in college. Like I started a campus magazine, for writers and artists, and did a bit of writing, and so I had I'm a musician, but I had really explored that, So Ray really brought that out, and not just for the documentary, but their whole path. Watching Ray uh, develop and make films with her friends, and just the way that they did it, that there was no ego in the room. They just really all loved each other and loved what they were doing. And all the parents became friends, and we're
Right.
still friends,
That's
you
nice.
know. But as far as how our relationship has changed, um, we're definitely more peer to peer type of thing, and I really lean on them because they know what they're doing. And it's funny because Um, on the one hand, I have total confidence and faith in Ray. On the other hand, in a way, I still view them as a child. So so I'll throw something out and then they'll come back with it. I'm like, oh yeah, of course they got this. And I'm talking about not just, how they set up an interview, their knowledge of the lighting and what have you, but also when I'm talking about, concepts or ideas or whatever, that they just get it. I'm like, oh yeah. So it's kind of like I shouldn't, but I underestimate them and they constantly put me in my place, but in
Right.
a very nice way. I mean, love for you to meet Ray because Ray's such uh, a humble, nice person,
That sounds good.
um, who's just is one of those people that just is very consistent in their life. They decided at 6 that they wanted to do karate, and we're like, really? So for 6 years, 4 nights a week, and got their black belt. Knew from 9 that they wanted to make films and just did
Wow.
it, but it's not bragging about it. Isn't
Mm.
some people are like, they're just all about the work, I guess you would say, and consistent and
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
caring.
Yeah.
I helped on one of their films. It was a music video, and one of the scenes was quite dramatic that one of the characters had died. So I had built the coffin and they were lowering it in the ground. But before the scene, and there was about 20 people in the shot, um, she chatted with all of them and said, look, this is emotional. I don't know if you've
Mm.
been to funerals. This is a safe space if you need a break. And that's what really touched me is the care
Right.
with who she's working with. And so that really helps too, because you're talking to people, in our documentary, and you're asking them to really expose themselves. When I start off with tell me about your childhood, and there's 3 cameras and lights at them, and people that besides myself they don't know, setting that safe environment, safe space is just amazing. And I know she has that, but to watch it happen,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is just I really lean on her for that because I tend to, you know, I I don't always think about that as much. I think, well, I know this person, but not really
Yeah, yeah,
think,
yeah.
yeah, but there's 4 strangers, and
Yeah.
so, so yeah,
Oh, that's
it's
great.
just really appreciated her as a them as a peer, and just really seeing what they're capable of. And then beautifully is that there's just been people added along the way,
Mm.
said, "Oh, I would really like to work on that." And that whole thing
Right.
of, "Oh,
It
wow, other
organically
people."
expands because of
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
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 because
yeah.
I'm not trying to say, "Oh, can you work for me for nothing?" or whatever. It's
Right.
like, no, I would really my composer, he composed 5 minutes for my POC. He said, "I
Mm.
just really wanna do this." I'm like, "Fantastic, because I can't
Right.
pay you." I'm starting to build a budget, but, you know, eh, not having an experience of having to ask people do something for nothing, which I'm a firm believer people should get paid for what they do. Every labor has value. But when someone truly says, I just really want to work on this with you, I'm like, okay,
Mm.
that's
Well,
cool.
that's when you know when somebody's in for the project, which is
Yeah.
always, they've got a sense of ownership from it, in terms of the value of the project to them in a
Hmm.
personal way, but also, to the collective as a project to work together on. That's
Right.
always when you've got somebody who's in
Yeah.
for it, as it were.
And the people I'm working with, we hope to continue. I had a more experienced documentary filmmaker who I met on LinkedIn.
Right.
It's another story, but I started a video consortium hub in New Jersey, and I was just looking for documentary filmmakers in New Jersey, and connected with him, and he ended up with his much better equipment coming and filming with us. And he's doing other projects that we're working on together. So it was he saw and I paid him a stipend, and paid us gas and meals, and we had these, you see in some of my posts, we had these great picnics and eating at a diner. But it felt natural because it was like, hey, I really like what you're doing. It's very much like what I'm doing. He had just finished the documentary on Emmett Till. He's doing one now called Urban Canvas about uh, the original graffiti artists, and which is, so we're very much in line with what we do, and it's like we're both, he's more in a position of this is his livelihood. He's got a day job too, but I'm in a different position, but we're
Yeah.
still want to just do it together, and we're of the same lane. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what made you want to document the process on Substack from
Yeah.
the start? What was the sort of reasoning behind that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I had the coffee with Steve Rogers, Ray's mentor. And one of the things he said is, you really have to document this experience of making this film with your son, Ray. You know, so I had a Substack, which I don't think I ever used.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I'll just use Substack because I didn't see how I was going to use. I mean, I set up a Facebook and an Instagram for the film, but I didn't. I said, let me give Substack a try. The format was a little, I thought, better, right? So my first post was just kind of like a picture of me at my building I was building, and hey, I'm just going to talk about my experience of making this film with my kid. So that's was really the impetus for it, was Steve saying, you should document this. And, I've also just done, my camera, just whatever occurs to me
Mm,
and filming it. And, we've done BTS, which is not just serving the film, but also the experience. But really, that was the primary reason. And it just felt like a natural fit using Substack.
yeah.
And little did I know.
Little did you know that suddenly this whole community and whole, way of talking about film and
Yeah. Yeah.
the grounding of your experience, it seems, has kind of been aligned to this idea of non-day or non-D,
Yeah.
however, non-dependent filmmaking.
Hmm.
Was that something you immediately kind of gravitated towards? You saw people talking about this idea, and that felt like it was something not. I mean, it's not wholly new, talking about doing things outside of the system, but
Hmm.
particularly the sort of the motivation and the passion behind it, and then how people have now made that into something concrete.
Yeah, I absolutely, totally gravitated towards it. One, because I didn't know anything about the previous system or
Mm.
whatever. And also, it passed the, uh, I don't really use this term, but I guess it's understandable, sniff test. Having doing a lot of organizing, you can kind of
Yeah,
tell, like, if people are for real, or
sure.
you know, everybody's working through what this might look like, right? But are people's hearts really in the right place? And I just saw that that was the case. And I said, okay, I want to be part of this, and maybe I'll just contribute as far as what I know about organizing and community and what's real and what's not, without having any of the technical knowledge, you know. And, to the extent that Ted asked me to take over his Substack on the Thursday, which was
Yeah, yeah.
pretty incredible. But so I guess yeah, I just saw that, and now it's only become more apparent the way things are progressing, that it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just a lot of talk, but like, what can we concretely do? Like the NonDē 50, which is
Mm.
now I think 125 people.
Yeah, there's so many
Um,
films there. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
working with Michael Levine and some other people, just putting a list of cinemas together and trying to talk to the owners. They're having these meetups now with table reads and going over a script and showing a few minutes of your film. And, so these are concrete things. There's no playbook, there's no, what's right or what's wrong, but let's experiment and let's try. And but let's be nice to each other about it. And that's what I feels here, right?
Yeah, that's a key thing, isn't it? That there's a sort of transparency and an openness, and we use the word empathy, but also a kind of giving of
Hmm.
yourself,
Hmm.
a little bit, that I think is probably, people hold back, don't they, these days a lot. I think it sometimes
Yeah.
there's, I mean, I was reading an article the other day that was talking about all the things that are going wrong in the world, and like one of the things that they talked about was they'd done this survey, and it was about trust. It's like the
Mm.
levels of trust of somebody else in your community is an all-time low. So I think we need
Mm.
to, I think that's one of the things that the community on Substack has done around film, has sort of quickly get garnered a level of trust among the people.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's absolutely true. Trust and just feeling safe to just be yourself and really be exposed, and uh that's rare, right?
Mm, yeah,
In
indeed.
particular in the uh I would assume the filmmaking industry, based on what I know of it, it's tough interpersonally, but especially there. So, and I've exposed myself saying different things, and, you know, to have that is powerful in itself. You know, even if nothing else that they do really, come becomes really helpful, the fact that you have a place where you you can be in community with other people when sometimes you feel so alone, or ready to get that emotional support alone, even if some of the ideas, I think they will pan out, they're going to change maybe or
Yeah,
adjust,
yeah, of course,
but
of course.
that alone is not the as just the only critical thing. It's
Yeah, yeah,
also just having someplace. I mean, I love these in real life meetups. I've gone to 4 of them now,
yeah, yeah.
and it's just
We've
it's
just
just
had our fourth one, I think, in London. So they
have
are
you been
nice, and
going?
yeah, yeah. I've been to
Yeah,
three of them, and
awesome.
they've we're doing our first micro cinema event on the 31st.
Yeah. See, that's
And
really cool.
yeah, they've asked me to compare it, so I have to
Uh,
watch all the films and do the Q&A bits at the end. So
as the
that should be fun.
resident PhD professor.
Well, I don't know whether it's that.
Uh,
I kind of got volunteered into it, and I sort of agreed on the proviso that everybody was happy that I did it, because I'm not a filmmaker, and I feel,
right,
I don't want to sort of pull that card as if to say, well, I'm a academic,
right,
you know what I mean? I should be
right,
doing this
right,
at
right.
all, I don't want to do that.
I know about more about films than you do, but I know you make them.
Exactly, that's it. I only watch them.
Yeah, right. I mean, what I love about it, like the last one I was at, um, this person saddled up to me, and I knew his name, and I had read some of his Substacks. His name's Ari Gold,
Mm,
so I didn't know anything about him, and he just listened to me talk about my documentary for 10 minutes. And as I do, I always try to find out more about the person. And his first film was, I guess it was student film, won an Oscar. And his most recent film is executive produced by Francis Ford Coppola. Uh, but he's not about that. And he's a really interesting guy. And it's more like, hey, let's just talk. And, we do this little circle and everybody talks about what they're doing. It that in itself is just is wonderful, because some of the
yeah,
events it's kind of like, oh, who's that? What
yeah,
can
yeah,
he do
yeah.
for me? And
Exactly.
I'm not
Yeah.
into that.
No,
I
no,
don't
no.
need that. You know.
Well, listen, Tom, it's been great talking to you. I want to do my 10 questions on cinematic identity to round off. Is that okay with you?
Sure. Are you grading on a curve?
No, no, there's no grading.
Okay.
So one thing I have to do,
These
it's kind of a quick fire round, but just give me an answer to each question, and a little bit of context, a couple of sentences on why that's the case. And as you say, or as I say, there's no grading, there's no points at the end of this,
okay.
just a little bit of fun. So the first 9 questions are ones I ask everybody, and the 10th is specific to that person. I've tried to think of something that aligns with their interests filmically, right? Okay, so question number 1. What's your favorite cinema to go to in the world?
Uptown Theater, Uptown Cinema in Minneapolis. Unfortunately, it's closed, but that was my favorite.
Was that a childhood one?
That's the one I went to right after high school with my Uncle Lance when I was going to university.
Lovely, lovely.
Yeah.
Question 2. Do you prefer watching alone or watching with others?
Alone.
Fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
same here. Is that any particular reason for that, or is it just, you like to take things in and not have any disturbances?
Because, because there's a different dynamic when you're with someone. Although I might qualify that with it depends who it is, and there's very few people that I would bring into that space. Now, going with my Uncle Lance, I felt like was with someone, but alone because he
Yeah.
just observed too, and he gave me my space to, yeah.
If you can find somebody who you like going to the cinemas with, that's a great person. Keep
Yeah,
hold of that
yeah,
person,
yeah.
Do you prefer front row or back row?
If I had my choice, it'd be back row, yeah.
Right. Cool. A little bit of distance. That's good. Question 4. A filmmaker whose work you will always go to see in the theater.
Scorsese.
Scorsese. Yeah, that's high on a lot of people's lists who I've spoken to, I think. Question 5. An actor that you'll watch in anything.
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe. That's the first time I've had that, but that's a great pick. What is it about Willem that grabs you?
He's just so real. The Florida Project,
Right.
He doesn't play himself every time, even though he's very recognizable in the
Sure.
role. And just something comes through that, I can't put it into words.
Yeah, I always think he's the role that people miss out on is Platoon.
Yeah,
He's very good in that.
It's probably one of the first things I saw him in.
Yeah.
Yeah, his humanity in that, and the part was that, but the way he played that part.
Yeah.
Just
so good.
very believable. That term's thrown around, but
yeah. Yeah, no, he definitely is. Okay, conversely, an actor or actress who you don't get. Everybody likes, but you don't quite get it.
Whoa, that's a long one. That I don't get. I would say Ryan Reynolds.
That is a very good answer. Yeah, sometimes with these people who make huge movies, and you're like, where am I missing something here? Is the charisma just something that is bypassing me?
Is it because he's tall and he's? I don't.
Yeah.
Who knows with these?
Yeah. Generic American film star, clone, basically, Ryan Reynolds. Isn't he?
And he's Canadian, but
sorry. Yeah. I'll get the Canadians on my back now for saying that. So question 7, a film that affected you physically in the auditorium. I don't know, made you cry or made you, physically you felt something.
But yeah, Rocky.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Emotional response.
Yeah. Come on, Rocky.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well, that's it. It makes you move, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sure. Question 8. Do you walk out or suffer through to the bitter end if it's a terrible film?
I've walked out. I walked out of a Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah, and maybe just because it was so different than something I'd seen, but I felt no obligation to stay.
Yeah. I think when I was younger, I was like, I'll stick it out. And now I'm like, if this is terrible, I'm out of there.
Yeah.
Life's too short, This is one that you can interpret the way that you want. Question 9. A film that you'd consider a relationship deal breaker.
Okay, so
Either something that
I
you
kind
got
of
it.
get
Yeah.
it.
Yep. Sorry.
So being that I've been married so long,
Yep.
but let's say I was just
Starting out.
dating, and if someone just didn't like it, um, and that would probably be like a Quentin Tarantino. Like
Okay.
if you couldn't watch like Reservoir Dogs and just say, "Oh, that's awful," and I don't get it, or the Coen Brothers like Fargo, and
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
But I had already been married quite a while. But I imagine if I went out with a date and they didn't get those movies, that would have been a non-starter.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes you can take that like there's a specific film that you love that if somebody doesn't like, you'd be like, well, I don't know about that. But I agree with you. It's more like you can go into a movie, and if it's like, even if it's not the greatest movie of the world, but there's something to talk about. If you go out, if you leave and somebody's like, didn't get it, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like, okay, then there's nothing to talk about here.
And actually, that literally happened to me because
Right.
when I went to see Rocky, it was the first date with this girl, and I was talking to her. We walked there because small town the whole way home, and she didn't have a word to say. And I'm like, this isn't going anywhere. She was a
Well,
beautiful girl, but
yeah.
there's no i- intellectual connection.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I
Well,
actually had that experience.
all's well that ends well, though, since you've been married for so
Yes.
long
Oh,
now.
absolutely. Yeah. Who said? You know. Oh, maybe it was this pseudo guru, but I do believe what he said that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. If you look back and say, well, I made that decision and that, and I'm happy where I am. And you know what?
Yeah,
I can look back and say, well, maybe I should have gone there. But look, I'm talking to you.
indeed.
Who'd have, who'd have
Who'd have thought
thought
that?
about, who'd have thought
Yeah,
that? This little
yeah,
kid from St. Paul.
indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, final question. So you've made the documentary you're making now. It's wildly successful. You've been given a load of money and carte blanche. Who or what would you like to make a documentary about?
I think I would like to make a documentary. Um, Let me put this the right way. I'd loved what um, they did with The Perfect Neighbor, and it inspired me to make a documentary more along those lines of using just footage because they told such an amazing story. Um, so it may not be of a particular person. So that was just one thought I had, but um, yeah, so I don't think it would be a particular person, but yeah.
Just in that kind of
Sorry, I don't
way.
have a good answer.
It's all right. No worries. No worries. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I think like with documentary, especially if you're in the middle of making your first, then all of your thought process
Hmm.
is on this, and then suddenly to have an idea about, oh, what I'll do,
Hmm.
what is the next one going to be?
Hmm.
That's quite hard, I think.
Well, and it might be on Haiti. I spent close to 3 years in Haiti,
Oh, right. Okay.
and it changed my life. And I've been actually recently working with Elaine Martin, who made a fabulous documentary. It took him 12 years on the occupation of Haiti, and it's brought those thoughts back, which have never really left me, of trying to tell that story in a different way because it encompasses all that's wrong with the world, as far as how we treat other countries and racial injustice and economic injustice and how wonderful the people are there. I mean, so there's a lot there too. So that might be one because it's not just about a relationship or the country in particular, but how it's really representative of how the world is functioned, since they started setting ship from Spain and Portugal and England, and conquesting
Yeah,
savages.
yeah.
It's
The
really,
colonial kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
spread is ongoing, isn't it? It never
yeah.
really ceases.
Um, I mean, the first independent black, formerly enslaved black republic in 1804, 50 years before the United States, and they've paid the price ever since, you know. So I think that might be a story.
Indeed, indeed. Well, listen, Tom. In the world as we look around it right now, as we talked about before, it's always nice to connect and have a conversation because that's where there's little bits of joy that's seeping through the cracks. So it's been really great to talk to you, and good luck with the film going forward.
Thank you. This has been great, Dario.